In the first game of the Rays series, it was the pitching, but on Wednesday night, it was the hitting. Absolutely no offense as the Red Sox lose once again to the Tampa Bay Rays.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I am your host, Massachusetts Pirates team insider and WooSox production assistant, Jake Ignaszewski, and here, as always, with my co-host, NESN's Lauren Willand. And before we go into this recap, we're also going to be having on Cooper Boardman, who's the sideline reporter and broadcaster for the WooSox, as we continue to look forward to 2023 and what the future of the Red Sox looks like. But, we got to see a little bit of the future of this team continue. We've seen Wong, we've seen Casas be able to make some impacts, but, it was really nice to see the Red Sox, even though the offense didn't show up, Nick Pivetta have a great outing on the mound, and ultimately the bullpen was able to look nice as well.
Yeah, so overall, this is a winnable game for the Red Sox, but much like we've seen all season, this offense just really struggled in times that they needed to. But, Nick Pivetta, I feel like he was working really, really slow tonight. He had a ton of full counts. His first 10 batters, he had 7 full counts. I don't know if it was just miscommunication with Connor Wong, and I don't know if it was just, Connor Wong not calling the pitches he wanted, or if Nick Pivetta is still feeling the effects from the calf contusion. But, he got through 5 or 6 innings. He didn't give up a hit till later in the game. But it just seemed like that both of these teams just kind of sleptwalked through the entire game.
And it was pretty crazy through 4 innings. Both teams only had 2 hits.
Yeah.
And one of my friends was at the games, and I literally texted him, like, you couldn't have gone to a less offensive game than this one. And pretty crazy as well, looking at Nick Pivetta going into, I believe it was the 6th inning or so, especially with a guy who, only allowed 1 to 2 hits going into that 6th inning. It was pretty crazy that he had 90 pitches up to that point. But, I mean, sort of like you mentioned, filled up a lot of counts, had trouble a little bit with his control at the beginning of the game. But it was nice to see him have an effective outing, but really tough to not see the Red Sox come up in those critical situations when they had runners really in scoring position multiple times before during this game.
They led the game off with a double. Kike Hernandez doubled. That was the perfect opportunity right there to just take a 1-0 lead. This game is totally different. They're probably still playing at 9:50 at night if they just did something. Even in the 9th inning, the 8th inning, they had those opportunities. And it's just so, it brings us back to April and May, and just when they could not for the life of them score with runners in scoring position and just move the runners. And that's how the Rays scored. They just moved the runners by putting the ball in the air, putting the ball in play. And the Red Sox just could not do that. And it's like watching a slow fire. Like, it's just going to get bigger and worse, but you cannot take your eyes off it. But it's just what's gone wrong for the Red Sox all season, right? You get effective pitching, the offense can't do anything. You get effective offense, the pitching can't do anything. Like, there is just nothing that the pitching and the offense, I feel like, just have not been on the same page really much together all season, except for June when they won like 20 games in a month.
It's really crazy how, as you mentioned, sometimes one part works out, sometimes the other doesn't work out. But, as you mentioned, the Rays found creative ways to, not only get on base, but be able to get that one singular run of the game. We saw Francisco Mejia break up the no-hitter with a double. And then we saw Taylor Walls single pass shortstop Kike Hernandez to ultimately score that run. And then we also saw Taylor Walls steal second base. And, I really thought, honestly, that the Rays were going to continue to find creative ways to get runs in. And, that's just what makes them so effective is, not only on the pitching side are they so dominant, but on the hitting side, even though they don't have tons of power, and when you look at this lineup, you might not know every single name, they still find super creative ways to be able to get on base and continue the runners going. And, especially when the Red Sox, as you mentioned, in that first inning, Kike Hernandez leadoff double. And also, I forget what inning it was, but, Pham or Kike and Pham both got back-to-back singles to lead lead off, and they still couldn't get anything going. And one of the biggest frustrations for me, it was one out. JD Martinez, it was first and third, and just a little dinky fly ball, and you couldn't even hit a sac fly to center field. And obviously JD's power has been massively down throughout this season, but this is supposed to be one of our biggest and most powerful hitters in the lineup.
And this is what Alex Cora has harped on recently, and more so the last few weeks, that they need to stop playing desperate baseball and just try to put the ball in play. Go back to the simple things. Go back to just getting the ball in play and moving the runners. And I know that no one's harder on JD than JD himself, but these are times you need to come up big and you need to come in clutch and get these runs across. And yes, he's having a down year. You could make that case for many of the Red Sox players this year. And even though we can pretty much forget about the postseason, but you still want to win games. You don't want to be swept. They haven't been shut out since May 30th. And it's just, there was no signs of life from this Red Sox team, from really anyone, minus Kike Hernandez.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's been really nice to see Kike, after he came back from his injury, really finding creative ways to get on base, and also show why his recent extension wasn't a waste of money, and that he's going to be a key member of this Red Sox team in 2023. But as you mentioned, you said it perfectly when we first started talking about the game. 10 runners left on base. And when I saw the lineup come out with no Devers and no Xander, I tweeted out, I said, this is going to be interesting. Hopefully the rest of the offense can sort of find creative ways to score runs, get on base. And, they still got on base, but it says it right in the numbers, 10 runners left on base. And even with Devers and Bogey out of the lineup, you would still expect this team to score more than one run.
You would expect that. I mean, it's, they knew yesterday that Xander Bogaerts was not going to play Wednesday. They knew that. And I'm assuming they knew that Devers wasn't going to play either, because it was just a rest day for him. They're certainly constructing this lineup and playing like they're not going to make postseason. That they're not trying to risk any further injury to Bogaerts, that any further injury to Devers, and et cetera, et cetera. We can go down the list all day. But even without Bogaerts and Devers, we've seen this team be able to win games still. We've seen them been able to at least get one run on the board, and lifeless. And yes, it's a getaway day. They have the off day Thursday, going into another AL East series, but maybe their minds were elsewhere. But you're going in being like, we don't want to get swept. Just try to salvage a win from this series.
Seriously. And, the only, I guess, positive thing that has really come out from seeing the Rays win these games is seeing them creep up on the Yankees. As much as, it's tough to see the Red Sox lose, it's nice to see a team like the Yankees, who had such a big lead on first place, kind of allowing the Rays to creep back in. Now, the Yankees are currently winning 4-1 as we're recording this. So the Rays won't be able to really gain too much ground from this win. But that's really the one positive that, I guess, comes out of this. And, the other positive, I guess, as well is, as I mentioned, the bullpen looked really good. Schreiber, Strahm, and Zach Kelly, all three of them only allowed 2 hits total over 3 innings. And it's really nice to see some of those guys be able to, be shut down when this Rays lineup is still one of the best in the league.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to see probably more strikeouts from the bullpen. The 3 of them, there was only 1, and that came from Schreiber. But beggars can't be choosers. You're going to take what you can with this bullpen if they're keeping the game close. I mean, they could have easily let that game get out of hand probably many times. That Rays lineup is very scary. But, like I said, you take the good where you can get it. And Schreiber's been really, really good this year. He's been pretty reliable. Matt Strahm as well. And Zach Kelly, sometimes the eye test, you're like, oh my God, he's all over the place. But he's getting the outs, and he kept Wednesday's game close. So it's a good positive to see toward the end of the season, and there's not much to really kind of look forward to for the rest of the season. The people just want to maybe get this team to 500, just finish the season at or above 500.
And really the only things left to look forward to is, the possibility of the Red Sox locking up some of these players for 2023 and us starting to get excited about next season. And, you can have the opportunity to give your reaction on this show to Kike Hernandez, because, something happened that you and I always get afraid that happens after we finish recording, is that some news is going to break. And I think it was like an hour or two right after we finished recording, the news broke about Kike Hernandez signing a 1-year extension for $10 million. But was curious on your thoughts on it, especially the $10 million figure.
Yeah, I think it's great for both sides. I think that, Kike Hernandez alluded to that Chaim Bloom promise that this team would be better, and that, that's obviously making sure they lock up someone like Bogaerts. Your team gets a lot worse when you don't have him on your team and a potential non-replacement on the horizon. So I'm glad he's back. He's very reliable. You can put him in center field. You can put him at second base. And ever since he got his hip problem and the hematoma taken care of, he's really just kind of come back into what we saw last year. And we know how much he struggled this year. And once he got everything figured out with his hip, he was able to get back to the Kike that Red Sox fans fell in love with. So I'm excited. It's a 1-year deal, just a straight up 1-year deal. There's no options, there's no incentives. So it's really good for both sides. And it keeps him in Boston for another year. It keeps a reliable glove in the outfield. We're not going to be watching Jarren Duran or, RIP Jackie Bradley Jr., but we're going to have a solid outfield next year with Alex Verdugo, and then you put Kike Hernandez out there, and then you figure out right field later. You can plug and play there.
Yeah, and that's what's nice about, that security is now center field is sort of out of the mind of Red Sox fans that's right. A need to fill. And Kike Hernandez was very reliable in that position. And, hopefully we can continue to see the bat going, and he can rekindle sort of what we saw not so much in the playoffs, because that was just legendary, but, getting back to that, 270, 15 home runs type of Kike Hernandez that we saw in 2021. But even though, watching the Red Sox isn't super duper exciting right now, you can get excited about some things. Summer's winding down, the nights are getting longer, but the breeze isn't the only things that's getting stiff. That's right. This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. Guys, we all know that confidence can take you far in life, and that's especially true in the bedroom, especially when it's time to take a step up to the plate. That's where Blue Chew comes in. It's a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in this, chewable tablets, and at a fraction of the cost. And you can take them anywhere, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever the opportunity arises. And the process is simple. Sign up at bluechew.com, and a consultant will one of their licensed medical providers. And once you've been approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. So no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in the line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped directly to your door in a discreet package. So if you want to benefit from the extra confidence, it's time to perform. Chew it and do it. So we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code Locked On at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code Locked On, to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast. We are here with a very special guest. He's the broadcaster and sideline reporter for the Worcester Red Sox. We are here with Cooper Boardman. So how's it going, Cooper? It must be pretty interesting seeing a lot of these guys from Worcester now in the Red Sox lineup.
No doubt. First of all, thank you both for having me. Big fans of the pod. But yeah, no, it's been a heck of a year in Worcester, and I think I'm sure this is something that you've talked about, but in the context of what's happened in Boston over the course, I feel like I've watched the Red Sox all year, honestly.
Yeah, seriously.
And I think my thing, we've seen everyone from Connor Wong, from Brian Baird to Triston Casas. Finally, Red Sox fans have seen Triston Casas, but Connor Wong there's been a lot of eyes on him. He was really strong after his injury. And on Wednesday, we saw him kind of struggle with Nick Pivetta. I don't know if it was communication. I don't know if it was the pitch comm. Pivetta was working a lot slower than he usually does, shaking off a lot of pitches, a lot of full counts. Is that just, them trying to get used to each other, some communication there, and just Connor Wong getting more reps? Because Alex Cora said he's going to be catching Friday and Sunday.
Yeah, I think, and it's funny, like watching the Sox game, kind of as the night went on, you saw that. My first reaction was almost like I was stunned by it in some ways, because that's not what it's been for Connor. I think that's more a reflection of those two guys getting on the same page and going from there. And I think, watching Connor over the last couple of years, he has become a very good offensive player at the AAA level, but the defense is the thing that has always just been so stringent. His pitch framing, the numbers, the metrics are great. The eye test he passes, everything that he does defensively, throwing out runners and all of that. And, talking with the pitchers that work with him consistently, there are no issues. He's really good at what he does, and he's a really, really smart guy. I remember a converted infielder that came over, became a catcher, and has done that at a really high level. And it's also, watching what guys have said about him at the major league level, the relationship that he has with Nathan Eovaldi, the relationship that he has with a lot of these guys that have started in Worcester and made their way to the Boston side of things, where I think any blip on the radar is exactly that, just something small. And I would imagine that we will be talking for many years about Connor Wong being an excellent defensive catcher for the Boston Red Sox.
And I think if you get Chris Sale's approval, because Chris Sale's raved about Connor Wong and of all these people, if you get Chris Sale's approval, you're probably doing something right.
No doubt.
That's what I was just about to say. That's something that stuck out to me with Chris, is that he mentioned, the attention to detail from Connor Wong was something that really stuck out to him. And that's been very impressive for me, watching him defensively develop. And one thing that really caught my eye, and I think everybody in Red Sox Nation's eye, is his power surge over the last month or so. I believe it's 10 home runs between Worcester and the majors as well. But what difference have you seen from Connor Wong offensively, not only this season, but especially this past month?
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess it's kind of the question that everybody's asking in some ways about him, because not that he hasn't been capable of power, but we've not seen it quite like this. And I think I'm thinking back to a month ago. We were just talking about this on our pregame show the other day, which was, you look at all three of his slash lines, batting average, on base, and slugging percentage coming into the year, or coming into the month. That was batting average was 1,000 times better. On base percentage, a ton better. Walk percentage, strikeout percentage, all in the right direction between last year and this year. And the only thing that hadn't kind of, taken the jump along with it was the slugging. It was the power. It was the only thing that had not well surpassed what his numbers were a year ago. So I argue that he is a much better hitter this year, just period, from the perspective of taking pitches, of having patience, of using the entire field in a number of different ways. And so I almost think that this explosion over the last few weeks is almost regression in a good way, coming back to where things were supposed to be for him, because he had just made too many strides watching him every day not to have numbers that reflected that. And so I think, that's part of it. And then the other part of it too, and you can kind of see it with your own eyes. WooSox fans have seen it. Red Sox fans will see it soon, I promise, is what he's done to the opposite field. He's not a big man. I mean, you're talking, 6 foot, under 200 pounds, but he has extraordinary power towards right center and right field. And when he gets something out over the plate, the way he's been locked in over the last few weeks, that is what has been most impressive. And I think that, of all of the things, when you're wondering, okay, how do you get consistent power at the big league level? How does power translate? That is the best sign of all, at least in my mind, for Connor Wong.
And he's been, like you said, he's got all that kind of power. And it's funny that you say he's not a big guy. I'm 5'2", so 6 feet is like a giant to me. I mean, anyone above 5'5", and I'm like, that's a whole new world up there. But the other big boy, Triston Casas, every time I see him, I'm just amazed at his size and that he's an athlete. And this guy can move really well at first base. And we've seen him, we've seen the plate patience. We've seen the strikeouts. We've seen the struggles against lefties. But he just looks so poised. And it's not even his play at the plate or his play at first base. It's how he handles the media, because he's so young, but he acts like he is some 10-year veteran, and he's just so locked in. He's so respectful, and you would never know that he's only played in 3 MLB games.
I think, so I'm just going through kind of social media in my head about Triston Casas, right? You got the shirtless picture of him lying on the field at Fenway and all that stuff, and Alex Gordon was joking about it, and I think people, like, in this world that we live in the Twitter universe, where everything is everywhere and what you do is on full display kind of at all moments, I think people don't buy that it's genuine in some way from Triston. Like, Triston is Triston at all moments. I have no doubt about that in my mind, just watching him interact with people, watching him be around, to your point, media, but also just people in general. And so, like, him lying on the field at Fenway with his shirt off is nothing more than Triston doing what he does every single day. He just happens to be doing it with cameras watching this time. And I think that kind of epitomizes everything that you just said about him and the way he carries himself, the way he handles himself. In my mind, I've not met a AAA baseball player over the last couple of years in Worcester that's been more equipped to walk up to the major leagues and have mental success, because he's such a process-oriented person. And that's the thing. Like, he is just such a focus on, the work that he does. And by the way, there's no reason to waver from that, because look at where he is. I mean, the work has absolutely paid off at every single level. And I really don't have a lot of doubt that that's going to happen at the major league level as well. But, to what you said, like, that is who Triston is.
You said it perfectly, and that's something we were joking about at the WooSox. Is he was doing the same thing in Worcester, but people weren't taking pictures of it, and the Red Sox media was going crazy. Yeah, Red Sox media was going crazy and making fun of him. What is this Earth thing crap? But I think it's also really interesting as well. When you talk to him, and you interviewed him walking around the field, and if fans haven't checked that out yet, it's on the Worcester Red Sox YouTube channel. Cooper and Triston did a great job of, breaking down sort of not only Triston as the person, but as the hitter. And one thing that I found fascinating is his focus on just getting on base. And, even though he's a home run hitter, that doesn't define his approach at the plate. And I thought it was so fascinating seeing that, not only in his plate approach in the minors, but in the majors so far too.
Well, I think, something he said in that video, right, is if I'm focused on slugging, I'm going to get too big. I'm not going to be able to stay within myself. If I focused on getting on base, I'm big enough where if I hit balls, they're going to go out of the ballpark. And that's been the case for him. One of the things he didn't say in the video, just kind of with talking with him, I asked him how he measures his success. And you got a lot of different answers to that question. I love that question. Like, there are guys who will be like, I'm going to tell you my WRC plus, and that's literally like what I'm focused on. And if that's like, if that's above league average, or it's the number that I want it to be at, I feel good. And Triston's answer was a very simple answer. And it was, the only way I measure my success is if I'm swinging at good pitches. And that's it. And so take that and imagine the fact that that is in his mind in some capacity always. And now watch him play baseball. And it makes perfect sense. And I think that is the thing about him, that is different than most of the players that we're talking about just in general, that you talk about on this podcast, is that the focus is just about good pitch, I'm going to swing, and trust the swing decisions from there. And he's been able to do it. And that's, I think, the other thing too, that like we had no doubt would translate, because the strike zone is the same at AAA and it is at the major league level. It's just about your internal discipline. And as we've talked about, he's got tons of that too.
And I think the Red Sox already have a ton of trust in him. I mean, even before Franci's injury on Tuesday, they didn't have a lot of options at first base with Eric Hosmer on the IL, Bobby Dahlbeck struggling, and Franchi struggling to play that position. So I think it said a lot that they sent down Bobby Dahlbeck to Worcester, and they're like, and Cora was like, yeah, we're going to play him pretty much every day so he gets his reps. I think that speaks volumes to how they already see him as part of this future, not just this year, but obviously long-term down the road.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. And I think, in the minds of everybody who has watched Triston Casas, over the last few years, and Red Sox fans who have maybe only seen him for a few days, that the hope is he's going to be that guy at first base. And certainly, you don't know if that's going to work out. We can't sit here and possibly prognosticate what that's going to look like. But I can say this, just having watched him, in September, he comes up, first AAA game, he strikes out against Cade Cavalli. He's one of the best prospects in the Nationals organization. Guy throws 100, all that. Strikes out, I think it was 3 pitches, maybe 4. And he comes up in his second at bat, AAA game. I've talked to him, Triston, that is, about it a long time ago. And he was like, I remember being really nervous in that second at bat, like big deal for me. And of course, this is a guy who, like, when you look at him, he could be walking down the beach in Malibu. Like, it just doesn't look like anything phases him. And he got down, I think, 0-2 in the second at bat after striking out in the first at bat. He sees a ball and he said, I just needed to see one ball and that would kind of get me back to where I wanted to be. Takes 2 more, gets the 3-2, takes a pitch out, opposite field home run, first AAA home run. The rest is kind of history. And so those are the little moments, just watching him and getting the chance to see him, where you say, okay, this is a little bit different. And so when you talk about why the Red Sox are so excited and why Red Sox fans are so excited, that is probably the best example I can give as to why, and one that is actually based in reality.
And, we saw it all throughout, especially after the time that he came back from his ankle injury, being able to really come out of a little bit of a slump when he first came back and find ways to, continue to get better and get better. But honestly, I've never heard that word procrastinate. I'm going to have to write that down in my vocab to pull it out of my pocket sometimes. Yeah, I got to know how to spell it too. I got to tell you, sometimes on the broadcast, you take some words out that I've never heard in my life, and I try to say it to myself and repeat it. I'm like, I got to bring that back up sometime, because then, when I say it, people will be like, wow, that kid's so smart. But another move that happened today is Abraham Almonte getting selected by the Red Sox as Franchi Cordero was put on the 60-day IL. And that was not too much of a surprise to me. I was hoping that he got an opportunity, especially with how consistent he's been since being traded over to the Red Sox. In my opinion, he's been one of the most disciplined hitters in that WooSox lineup since getting traded over. But I was curious on your impression of him.
Yeah, it'll be, first thing is prayers to Franchi. Hope he's gonna be all right. One of our favorites in Worcester. But yeah, it's awesome to see Abraham get the opportunity. And I think, when you look at him statistically, he has been the WooSox best hitter since he came. I mean, just in terms of results purely, he is the league leader in slugging percentage in the International League. I mean, that is just period right there. That, you think about all the prospects, all the people, he is the league leader in slugging. And so, that in itself kind of shows you what he's done. He's a professional hitter. He's done it at a major league level before. And, it's I guess from the Red Sox perspective, it's kind of the perfect storm where they don't want Dolbeck to come up and not play. They don't want Duran to come up and not play. So, you give Almonte the opportunity, and I hope he gets, significant time. We'll see exactly how that all works out. I think the combination of on base that he brings, then obviously the power numbers that we just talked about, his eye, his, the discipline, defensive ability, speed, power, he checks all the boxes. He's an older player, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way, just to have a good understanding. And then beyond everything else, he's a great dude. I mean, he was an instant kind of walk in to the clubhouse and change the mojo and the vibe of the clubhouse. And that's legitimate. I don't, care kind of what level you're at or where you are in a season or whatever it is. But, when you have somebody who is relentlessly positive in the way that Abraham Almonte is, just being near him, whether you speak to him or not, you have an understanding. This is a completely different guy. And, maybe that'll be a good thing for a clubhouse. I don't know. But what I do know is that if he does get in the game, he has the ability to hit a ball a very, very long way, always.
The Red Sox could really use some of that right now, especially after Wednesday's loss. But is there a prospect in Worcester that maybe Red Sox fans should have their eyes on, whether it's a later call-up later this season or next year?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The easy answer, it is honestly the correct answer, is Manuel Valdez, who came over in the Christian Vazquez deal and has had just a really interesting, month or so, or just over now, with the WooSox, where he came in and he set the world on fire. Then he had some struggles for, the better part of a series or so. Remember, their 6-game series at AAA. And then turns around and has now really started to get hot. And I think there are kind of a few ways this breaks down. The first is the hitting, and the hitting is very impressive. He's got opposite field power, for, somebody who's, less than 23 years old on this earth to have that ability, to have the plate discipline that he has. He walks a ton. He has a very good idea of the strike zone. It is Casas-esque in some ways. I wouldn't necessarily take it that far, but it is certainly something that is a huge part of his game. So you take all of those things, and when, so a guy gets traded, right? And we're trying to figure out who this is that we're getting here. And Worcester, one of the things you sit down, you read the prospect rankings, whatever, is that his defense is the thing where they don't really know where they're going to play him, or they don't necessarily know what he brings to the table on a day-to-day basis. I've been really impressed with his defense at second base. He's played a good defensive second base, play here or play there, but certainly it's not a hole in his game the way I think, there's some guys where, you read that and says the defense isn't there, then you watch him every day and you say, oh, okay, I really understand that. It's not been that way for him. And so if he continues to progress, you're not going to see, I don't make the decisions, but I would imagine you're probably not going to see him in Boston in 2022, but he's shown everything he needs to do to be someone that is absolutely in consideration for a Boston Red Sox future.
Especially what he did on Sunday, coming just a single away from the cycle. And, that's one thing that, has really impressed me is his adversity overcoming, some struggles. And, even when he was struggling, still had a really good eye at the plate. And, there was some plays where I was like, holy crap. Like you said, like his defense was the weakness. And, we've seen him make some really nice plays over there at second base. But, one thing that I've noticed is that he's always got a smile on his face. Got a real great personality. So I'm curious on what you've seen from him in the clubhouse, in the dugout, and what sort of energy he's brought to this WooSox team.
Yeah, I just asked him, like, what's it like to be here? And he, the first thing that came out of his mouth was about the major league guys on the team, talking about, being around Abraham Almonte, being around Franchi Cordero, being around all of these guys. And it's cliche to say, you just want to see them soak it all in. You want them to get all the information that they can from the guys that have been there before and all of that. But it's the case, and it's what he does. And the reason why it's cliche is because you need to do it in some ways. And he's done that. I think just kind of watching him and seeing his development and, never stopped working. I think, he's got this very torqued up swing. Apologies for my rendition of it, but like very torqued up where he's got his inside shoulder very in. And one of the things that WooSox manager Chad Tracy was talking about is sometimes he can get almost too wound up. And that was some of his struggles. And then, he's kind of, for lack of a better term, unwinded in some ways over the last couple of weeks. And you've started to see what you saw on Sunday and what he's done. But I think that is an example of a 22-year-old who doesn't act like one. A 22-year-old who can make adjustments on the fly. You know how hard it is to make an adjustment at AAA at that age? There's so many guys you watch try to do it and can't. And so to see him, not so much the individual technical adjustment of that, but the ability to make that change. Because when you get to the big league level, that has to be able to be done, on the fly. There's no time for a growing pains process. And he's been able to do it. It's been really impressive.
It kind of reminds me when you say that he can make those adjustments on the fly, that every scouting report I've read, everything you hear about Marcelo Meyer, that he just has this awareness of the game that he probably shouldn't have at 19 years old, but he's able to just see the game and hear the game and make any adjustments, which gives me a lot of hope for him for the future. I still believe he's years out, but just to be able to do that, like you said, on the fly, I just think speaks to the maturity of somebody and their willingness to be like, okay, this isn't working. I need to fix this immediately. So I'm not going to do that again, but let's do trial and error from here on out and see what works.
And I think it's a two-way street with that, right? You need the guys in the organization that are going to be able to do that mentally, but you also need an organization to allow those guys to do it. And I think, just being around the coaching staff in Worcester, from, a first-year AAA manager in Chad Tracy, who, these guys listen to in a big-time way. You talk about Rich Gedman as a hitting coach, Paul Abbott, and that entire pitching staff and the coordination that goes along with it. And there are countless other, names that are a huge part of it. And, to be honest, I'm only seeing one of the levels of it on a day-to-day basis at AAA, but there is an investment in the minor league product. And I don't mean that the output and the games you're watching necessarily, although that's part of it, but there's an investment in the quality of these guys and their development. And it's a really fun thing to see. And I think you've seen it, I know it's not been the season that Red Sox fans, have wanted it to be, and that's understandable, but to see the guys go up there and that have had the success that they've had and the success that, I think some of these, especially last few guys in September are going to have is an extraordinary thing. And there aren't that many organizations that are capable of doing that.
Couldn't agree more. And that's been so exciting to see. Lots of these guys be able to develop and flourish. And it's nice that that professionalism is there for guys like Bobby Dalbec, Jaron Duran, who are looking to get back up to that major league level. But really appreciate you coming on, Cooper, and giving your insight. Really interesting to hear from your insider perspective. And for anybody that wants to follow you either on Twitter or support you in any way, how can they do that?
Yeah, Cooper K. Boardman on Twitter. My DMs are not open.
Still try to slide in. Just kidding. But really appreciate you coming on, my man.
No, thank you both for having me. This is awesome. And I'm happy to be back anytime.
We hope that you did enjoy this episode and, not only got some insight from our game recap, but also some insight from Cooper Boardman and got a little bit more excited about this Red Sox future going into 2023. It was really interesting to hear, not only his thoughts on, Triston Casas, Abraham Almonte, but also a guy like Enmanuel Valdez. But we're going to be continuing to try and get you excited about this Red Sox team, even though the playoff chances are slim. We're going to keep on bringing our energy and our personality to each and every single episode. So if you have not yet, make sure to subscribe on whatever audio platform that you listen to. Also over on YouTube. You can also follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. Myself on Twitter, it's at Jake Iggy. And also Lauren, it's La 3 Laws. Lauren with 4 R's. And we want to thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now make your second listen and go and check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. It's an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. But we'll end this episode how we always end it. Let's go Sox. Peace.